So a year ago today, I released my very first talking planning video. It was on Anzac Day, in the afternoon. I've been thinking about doing that for a couple of weeks, but I decided it was just time to go and do it. So in mid to late April, we were right in the middle of lockdown and I just lost my job as an autonomous vehicle chaperone. And that trial was just cancelled because of COVID. So I graduated from uni a few months ago in December 2019 and I was kind of stuck in this state of limbo. Some of my friends had just transitioned into working from home, some had also just lost their jobs, and some hadn't managed to find work since graduating. It was really a weird time. In April 2020, I could refresh LinkedIn, Seek, and LG Assist as many times as I wanted, and unfortunately all that ever came up was 0 jobs match your search criteria. So I decided I wanted to do something different with my time. One thing I always found was that the urban planning industry really struggled with recognition and image. And that drew me into YouTube, a platform which breaks the conventional boundaries of industry media sources and provides a wide audience. So I grabbed my old DSLR, a tripod, and I made a makeshift set in my backyard and filmed my first video. Hello and welcome to Talking Planning. The picture wasn't properly in focus. The built-in DSLR microphone was awful. Entrant to the field. As a recent graduate, finishing university last year, trying to enter the full-time workforce during a pandemic and an economic downturn is certainly a challenge. And I spent 5 minutes reading off a script and pretty much ignoring the camera. In terms of quality, the only way from there was up. But fortunately, up is where we went. For the next video, I switched to a Sony action cam I had lying around, which was easier to set up. It recorded slightly better audio, and I improved that over the coming weeks via a cheap lapel microphone from Jaycar and an extension cable. It was still low budget, but it was certainly an improvement. And I used my first video with the new setup to talk about my experiences on an autonomous vehicle project and use some film clips from my phone as reference material.
In today's video, I'll give you a little bit of a summary on the roles of the vehicle, what my role was as an autonomous vehicle chaperone, fill you in on some of the specifics about an open road trial, run through some of the specifications, and consider some of the challenges and benefits of this vehicle, and provide a quick conclusion.
Around this time, I started to think more carefully about intro and outro clips, and I had a few early attempts, but they just didn't quite make the cut. Here was one of them.
Hello and welcome back to Talking Planning.
The same trend continued for another month or so, sitting in my bedroom which I'd turned into a mediocre film set by sitting next to a magnetic board with a picture on it and by putting a white sheet over the window. I also started using Premiere Pro to edit videos, and at first it was a struggle, but the hard work paid off and I was now able to do so much more than Windows Movie Maker could ever offer. And it wasn't until late June when I really started to step up my video production game. I decided to swap from my old Sony action cam to my Xiaomi Pocophone which I had at the time. I used that to film the odd video or two, and it gave me usable 1080p footage with little hassle. Naturally, I decided that a set and forget device, like a mobile phone, was going to be better for me, especially as travel, for non-essential reasons, was becoming a thing again, and you could travel further and further. So I used that phone to film my double-decker CityCat review at the start of July, and this was my very first back on public transport style video.
We're now heading past North Quay, which is one of the new stops, which is characteristic of the design that they commissioned after the 2011 floods, as a necessary step to ensure that our ferry terminals survive flooding and severe weather events far better than they have in the past, and I think it's going to work nicely. These ferry terminals are designed to actually cope with a Q100 flood level or higher, so it means that they are much more resilient to floods.
It was an early attempt, but I spent a lot more time on editing And I also stumbled across some royalty-free YouTube studio music and sound effects for the first time. In reality, it meant I just used the song Flight to Tunisia way too many times, and it became the intro music for a few months. Speaking of which, it was also around this time where I started to think about a better channel intro. This is Talking Planning. From here, I started filming a lot more transport review style videos. Local travel was now considered low risk, and I could travel around southeast Queensland with few restrictions. I started filming new reviews north, south, east and west of Brisbane, and there was plenty of transport content to be had.
Which is better for passengers and makes the experience much more enjoyable.
I even revised the city review format and headed to Bribie Island to showcase it.
Hello and welcome back to Talking Planning, and today you join me at Bribie Island where it's bloody windy, bloody cold and quite sandy. But at least I've got coffee, and behind me a view of somewhere over there, Moreton Island, and that ship which is probably coming into dock in Brisbane.
Around this time, I also got myself a serious hardware upgrade, and I shelved my Xiaomi in favour of a Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra. I now had a phone camera which did easy 4K recording, with both front and rear cameras, and that made filming far easier. This was great, and it meant that I could get footage much more easily and at far better quality. The new hardware upgrade meant it was way easier to capture video, and the wide-angle lens was great for fitting more into each frame. Around this time, I also noticed that train-based videos were becoming very popular. My first train review was of the NGR, and that didn't do quite so well. But once I did a review of the IMU 100, that became a popular one amongst the enthusiast crowd. I also went to Bundaberg at the end of July for a couple of days, and that proved to be a great source of video material. In fact, my most popular video to date is still the tilt train from Bundaberg to Brisbane, with over 4,400 views at the time of writing. Around this time, I also decided to give the intro clip another crack and created a revised version. This is Talking Planning. While up in Bundaberg, I caught a bunch of interesting local buses, and many of them lacked a Queensland staple, aircon. Most of these review videos made it to light throughout August, September and October, where I released a variety of different videos including more city reviews,
At least I have got coffee.
train reviews, bus reviews and city cat reviews. The end of September also had an important milestone for the channel, my very first bus week.
Good morning, welcome back to Talking Planning, and welcome to Bus Week.
Featuring 5 buses from across Queensland, the series proved popular and was a great way to showcase the variety of vehicles available. From minibus through to double-deckers. Around this time, I released a few more bus and train reviews. And then we hit episode 50 in early October, where I caught the newest ferry in Brisbane, Neville Bonner. Around this time, I also released my review of Calparan, which was the only old-style ferry to make it back into service after the sudden stoppage of the city ferry fleet. After a few new bus and train reviews, including a review of an MAN from Hadley's Coaches of Warwick, a train review of the SMU 260, and a ride on board a unique Sunbus vehicle, I caught a ferry that I'd been trying to catch for ages, Kalamaru, and then it was time for another bus week. Talking Planning presents Bus Week 2. Around this time, a friend of mine sent me an intro clip that he made, and I loved how short and snappy it was, so it just stuck. Bus Week 2 also proved popular, and it contained a mix of buses from across SEQ once again, as well as another bus from Bundaberg. It turns out, it's actually a small group of Bundy bus enthusiasts that really like this channel. After several months off, ferries returned to the Brisbane River in a much greater capacity, and the Kitty Cats entered service on the 15th of November. And I decided it was an ideal day to do a review of one, with the video edited and released the next day in a marathon edit session. By November, I also had a crumb of comfort on the job market, with the autonomous vehicle trial being reinstated, now with a new operator and at Raby Bay. After a few weeks of training and test runs, we were ready to take passengers in early December. As this was only a casual role, my video editing and uploading frequency remained pretty generous. Although, late November and early December also proved to be a crucial time for setting up the next year. Around this time, I had plenty of job interviews and I was hoping that one of them would work out. By mid-December, I had my answer. 2021 would be a new year in a new city, with that new city being Newcastle, somewhere that I'd previously only spent 3 days. I actually got my contract on Christmas Eve, so that was a pretty good Christmas present. Speaking of Christmas presents, I launched Bus Week 3 on Christmas week, and included a variety of unique vehicles, including some from northern New South Wales, which was open for travel from early September. The bus on Christmas Day was a pretty unique one from Wollumbar Bus Company. Of course, December sported a couple of train reviews, including the SMU 220 and the IMU 160. Hello transport planners and fellow transport nerds, and welcome back to Talking Planning. Today, I think it's time to do a little bit of a recap on the year that was, 2020. I also finished off the year with The Year That Was video, which covered off everything I'd worked on throughout 2020. After not staying up late on New Year's Eve and working for the autonomous shuttle project for the last time on New Year's Day, I released my first video of 2021. I kicked off the new year with an active transport video, trying out a city cycle around the cycleways of Brisbane. Having concluded that the city cycle was a victim of bad publicity early on, and that the bicycles were better than I expected, I generally encourage people to give them a go before they're all gone. A few days later, I flew down to Newcastle to inspect some properties, and of course, I flew back into Brisbane to enjoy a few days of snap lockdown before moving all my belongings interstate. Once settled in Newcastle, I released my last couple of Queensland Rail train reviews, showcased some oddball South East Queensland buses, and made my move to Newcastle public, just before I started my new job. I think I'm going to pull up a pew and find somewhere where I can actually tell you one of the good reasons of why I'm in Newcastle and why I might be here for a little while longer. Naturally, moving into full-time work, the pace of videos slowed down a little, and I started aiming for weekly video releases. But on my birthday, I released one of the most anticipated videos in a long time, which was the ranking of every Queensland Rail suburban train. Today's video is one that you've been requesting for a long time. In fact, it's probably the most requested in the channel's history. So having travelled on all of the Queensland Rail suburban fleet, you've asked me to pick a favourite train. And today, we're going to do just that. This video is always going to be a difficult one to make, and however I ranked them, someone was going to disagree. So keeping that in mind, I was honest but fair, and fortunately, I didn't cause World War III amongst transport nerds. Around this time, I'd also started to build up a little bit of a library of Newcastle and New South Wales transport footage, and my first few Newcastle bus and train reviews made it into the light, including this rather interesting Volgren-bodied Volvo B7 RLE, which was ex-State Transit, and this Hunter Valley Mercedes 0405NH. My first interstate train video also made it out, with my failed attempts to catch a C-set just before retirement making it out as a K-set review. And of course, plenty of people commented like, just try another day. What people forget to remember is I can't just retry these things the next day. So I work full time and taking days off requires plenty of coordination. And whilst the train between Newcastle and Sydney is decent, it's still a 2.5-hour trip each way. Throughout February and March, I settled into the new job and got my head around the New South Wales planning system, working on a variety of proposals and rezonings, along with a heap of other strategic work, which should hopefully have good community and social outcomes. But that's probably a topic for another time.
Doors closing. Please stand clear.
Importantly, I didn't just go and ignore the channel, and I tried to keep up my weekly video pace, showcasing a few more Brisbane transport options, and then finishing off March with Bus Week 4. And you join me for Bus Week 4. So it's been quite a while since I did one of these last. Originally, I was supposed to be heading back to Brisbane for Easter, but with the snap lockdown a few days before, I'd cancelled the trip, but I brought forward those videos by a few days. So instead, over Easter, I headed down to Sydney for a few days and had a good time visiting some friends and family. This trip also proved bountiful in new review opportunities, which should see the light of day eventually. In case you haven't worked it out, editing is a slow process, and even a short 5-minute review involves at least 4 or 5 hours of script writing, recording, editing and rendering to make it all work. After the Easter break, I finally showcased a train local to Newcastle, the Endeavour, which is quite a unique experience if you're used to the world of electric commuter trains. And I also released a review of an Iveco Metro operated by Rover Coaches, which is a chassis and body combination that is quite unique. So, that brings us to the summary of our first year of talking planning. So I started this journey having no clue what I was doing, recording on old equipment and using the most basic software possible. Since then, I've learnt some basic video editing skills on Premiere Pro, bought a decent microphone, and I've moved through a variety of camera setups to work out just what works well for me. This channel isn't big and it sure isn't high budget, but it is something I enjoy doing with my time, and over the past year, I hope I've managed to carve out a nice little niche in the transport and planning space. So I took a lot of my inspiration in creating this channel from aviation vloggers, who managed to make flight reviews exciting and interesting by adding a bit of a story behind them. So that's why I started narrating my videos. There are tons of people in Australia that do some great transport work, sharing content from across the country. But what I wanted to do that's a bit different is add a bit of a story behind it all. as to be expected, whenever you're in the public eye and on YouTube or any sorts of social media, there's always going to be a few hurdles. So for the first time in ages, just before making this video, I actually checked the held for review comments section, and there was one negative comment that I just had to laugh at a bit, which was someone having a whinge that these videos are really boring. I really hate to break it to you, buddy, but if you want more exciting videos, maybe a transport review isn't going to be your cup of tea. And of course, you get the odd random video dislikes, but hey, guess what? These things happen. There could be worse things to worry about. So now that we're getting toward the end of this video, you might be wondering what I've got planned next, and rest assured, I intend to keep this channel going for a while. And I have plenty of video ideas stashed away, and a big bank of footage which I really hope is going to see the light of day. I just need to find, magically somehow, some time to go and edit it, create, render, upload and publish. I'd expect to see plenty of Newcastle, Sydney and Brisbane transport making its way onto your YouTube subscription feeds, and maybe even the odd planning focused video, which has been lacking in recent times. 3 months into the new role, and I think it's time to share some of the things that I've already learnt. But anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this trip down memory lane, and as always, thank you for joining me, and I will see you again soon.